The Marietta chapters of the Sons and Daughters of the American Revolution celebrated local pioneer Rufus Putnam and America's 250th birthday today. Our Thomas Chase was at the event and has more.
March 5th marks an important anniversary in the founding of our country. 250 years ago Thursday, the founder of Marietta, Rufus Putnam, led the construction of fortifications at Dorchester Heights outside of Boston. The Marietta chapters of the Sons and Daughters of the American Revolution held a celebration to commemorate the day at Veritas Classical Academy Thursday.
And it is the celebration of Rufus Putnam, the founder of Marietta, and his innovative plan to fortify Dorchester Heights, a tall hill just outside of Boston that will basically force the British to evacuate and freeze Boston forever. They never return.
The fort was constructed in one night and left the British in the city of Boston stunned.
The British went to bed at night. There was nothing on Dorchester Heights that night. When they woke up the next morning, there were two complete forts, three smaller breastworks, manned with all the artillery from Fort Ticonderoga that had been brought back, cutting their way through the wilderness, manning the heights, along with hundreds and hundreds of infantry troops that had brought up there. And the British just couldn't believe their eyes when they woke up the next morning.
Everything Putnam learned to design and construct the fort was self-taught.
He had almost no schooling at all. He was self-taught, both reading and writing, as well as mathematics. All of the work as an engineer was all heavy math. He had a real knack for that, but again, it was all self-taught.
America would go on to declare independence a few months after the victory at Dorchester Heights 250 years ago. In Marietta, I'm Thomas Chase with WTAP News. This is home.
Coming up in sports, the 2026 WVSSAC